My name is Bella. I am 19 years old. I live in Palo Alto, California, inside a gated estate with iron fences and security cameras, in a house that still does not feel like it belongs to me. I do not go to college yet. I work part-time and attend therapy twice a week. I sleep in a bedroom larger than any place I lived in as a child, and I still wake up every night expecting someone to tell me I need to leave. Right now, the girl who lived my life for 18 years is kneeling on my parents' living room floor. She is crying, loudly, beautifully. I stand near the staircase, my back straight, my hands folded in front of me, my face carefully empty. I have learned that stillness is a kind of armor. If I do not move, if I do not speak, people forget to look too closely. The police officer's voice is calm and professional as he explains her rights. His words echo through the open space, bouncing off marble floors and glass walls. The house smells like expensive candles and fresh flowers. My mother lights them when she wants everything to feel normal. Nothing about this moment is normal. My mother grips the edge of the kitchen island so tightly her knuckles have turned white. Her breathing is shallow, uneven. My father stands beside her, shoulders squared, jaw locked, staring at a spot on the wall as if refusing to look directly at what his life has become. My older brother paces back and forth near the windows, rubbing his hands together, whispering to himself like he is trying to wake up from a bad dream. No one is looking at me. That hurts more than I expected. I was born in a county hospital outside Sacramento. At least, that was what I believed for most of my life. I do not have baby photos. I do not have a story about my first steps or my first words. I have records, case numbers, names crossed out and replaced by new ones. I grew up moving between foster homes and temporary placements. Some were better than others. None were permanent. I learned early how to pack quickly, how to make myself small, how to listen more than I spoke, how to read adults by the sound of their footsteps. By 10, I knew which moods meant food would be withheld. By 13, I knew how to sleep with one eye open. By 16, I worked evenings at a diner, wiping down tables and smiling at people who did not bother learning my name. By 18, I paid my own phone bill and stopped expecting anyone to save me. Then a hospital called. One phone call dismantled everything I thought I understood about myself. A nurse explained, her voice too practiced to be comforting, that 19 years ago 2 newborn girls had been placed in the wrong bassinets. Paperwork had been altered. Records had been falsified. The mistake had been buried so deeply that no one noticed until a routine audit unearthed it. DNA tests confirmed what the paperwork had tried to erase. The girl raised by a wealthy family in a gated community was not biologically theirs. I was. Blood brought me here. That was what my mother said the first night we met, her hands trembling as she reached for my face. Her eyes filling with tears she did not seem ready to shed. She repeated it like a prayer, like a justification. Like blood alone could stitch 18 lost years back together. 6 months later, blood is not enough to save anyone. The girl on the floor looks up at my parents, her mascara streaked, her hair deliberately undone in a way that still manages to look soft and fragile. She has always known how to cry in a way that draws people in. "I did not mean for this to happen," she sobs. "I was scared." Anyone would have done the same. I wonder how many times she practiced that line. When I first came to this house, everyone tried to be kind. My parents gave me a bedroom overlooking the pool. They filled my closet with clothes still stiff from the store. They asked careful questions about my childhood, my education, my plans. They spoke to me gently, like I might break. But kindness is not the same as belonging. She belonged here. She knew this house the way I knew instability. She knew which cabinet doors creaked, which floorboards to avoid at night. She knew how to lean into my father's arm, so he softened. She knew how to slip her hand into my brother's sleeve so naturally that no one questioned it. She knew how to mirror my mother's moods before my mother herself recognized them. She had 18 years of memory protecting her, and she used them to isolate me slowly and cleanly. She smiled at me in public, called me sister with warmth that fooled everyone but me. She offered to help me adjust, to guide me through school, to explain the rules I was never taught. In private, she planted doubt. She framed concern as kindness. She painted me as unstable, as ungrateful, as someone who did not quite fit. I watched. I remembered. I stopped defending myself. I stopped asking to be chosen. I let the truth collect quietly. Standing here now, listening to the officer finish his explanation, I understand something with terrifying clarity. This moment did not begin today. It began the night I realized that surviving this family required the same instincts that had kept me alive as a child. Silence, patience, endurance. The officer reaches for her arm. She flinches, then turns to my parents one last time. "You cannot do this to me," she cries. "I am your daughter." My mother finally looks at me. Her eyes fill with something raw and unsteady. Guilt, fear, regret, love, maybe. Or the horrifying realization that blood alone cannot undo years of attachment. I meet her gaze and say nothing, because the truth no longer needs my voice. I do not know it yet, but the girl kneeling on the floor has already crossed a line she can never return from. If she cannot keep this family, she will try to destroy me instead. This is not the end of my story. This is the moment everything finally begins to burn. The morning I started at my new school, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time and tried to recognize myself. The uniform fit perfectly. It was tailored, pressed, expensive. My mother had insisted on it. She hovered behind me as I adjusted the collar, her hands twitching, as if she wanted to help, but did not know how. My hair was clean, my shoes new, my backpack untouched. Anyone looking at me would have seen a girl who belonged exactly where she was. I did not feel that way. Private school had its own kind of silence. It was polite, controlled. People smiled as they assessed you. Their eyes lingered just long enough to calculate your worth before moving on. I felt it the moment I walked through the gates. She was waiting for me. My sister stood near the entrance, surrounded by girls who looked like magazine covers brought to life. Perfect hair, perfect posture, easy laughter. When she saw me, her face lit up. "There you are," she said warmly, stepping forward and looping her arm through mine. "I was worried you might get lost." The girls looked me over in unison. "This is Bella, my sister," she told them. Her voice bowed. "She just transferred." Their smiles tightened. Questions followed. "Where did you go to school before? What sports do you play? What clubs are you joining?" They asked politely, but their eyes flicked to my shoes, my posture, my hesitation. They noticed everything, I answered honestly. I always had. By lunchtime, I understood the hierarchy. Who mattered? Who did not? Who pretended not to care? I sat beside my sister while her friends talked over me, around me, through me. They laughed at jokes I did not understand. They referenced parties I had not been invited to. At one point, one of them leaned closer and said, with a sympathetic tilt of her head, "It must be so hard adjusting after everything." My sister squeezed my hand. "She is doing great," she said. "She just needs time." She said it kindly. She always did. At home, things were quieter. My parents tried to make space for me. My mother asked about my classes. My father asked about my teachers. My brother listened from the kitchen doorway, pretending not to care. I answered carefully. I learned quickly that too much honesty made people uncomfortable. At dinner, my sister dominated the conversation as she always had. Stories from school, inside jokes, plans for the weekend. She never excluded me directly. She simply spoke as if I were not there. When I excused myself early, my mother followed me to the stairs. "You can take your time," she said softly. "You do not have to push yourself." I nodded and went upstairs. In my room, I sat on the bed and stared at the walls. The furniture was beautiful. The space was generous. Everything about it screamed safety. And yet, my chest felt tight, like I was waiting for someone to knock and tell me it was all a mistake. The next weeks followed the same pattern. At school, my sister guided me with a gentle hand, correcting my missteps before anyone else could notice. At home, she offered to help me with homework, to introduce me to people, to explain unspoken rules. She was patient, attentive, perfect, and slowly, without raising her voice, she made sure I felt like a burden. She sighed when I asked questions. She reminded me how lucky I was. She joked about how different our upbringings were, always with a laugh, always with an audience. I started keeping notes. At first, it was just for myself. Therapy had taught me the value of writing things down. Dates, phrases, reactions. I did not accuse, I observed. My brother noticed before my parents did. He was quiet by nature. He spent most of his time in his room, headphones on, door closed. When he did speak, people listened, because he rarely wasted words One evening, I was in the kitchen making tea when he came in. "She talks too much," he said suddenly. I froze. "Who?" I asked. He shrugged, opening the fridge. "You know who?" That was all. But it was the first time someone else said it. After that, small things changed. He started eating dinner with us more often. He asked me about my classes. He asked what I liked to read. When my sister interrupted, he waited until she finished and then turned back to me. It was subtle, but she noticed. Her smiles grew sharper, her patience thinner. One afternoon, she forgot her phone on the kitchen counter. I did not mean to look. I only wanted to move it out of the way. But the screen lit up, and I saw my name. She was messaging someone. I read enough to understand. She was worried. She was losing control. And she was angry. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the quiet hum of the house. I thought about everything I had survived to get here. The foster homes. The nights I went hungry. The years no one fought for me. I was not fragile. I was patient. And patience, I had learned, was dangerous in the right hands. I did not want to take her place. I wanted the truth. And the truth, once it started to surface, did not care who it burned. The first real crack appeared over something small. It always does. It was a Saturday afternoon. My parents were out. The house was quiet in that expensive, controlled way that made every sound feel louder than it should. I was at the dining table working through an assignment when my brother sat down across from me with his laptop. "You are good at math," he said suddenly. It was not a question. I looked up, surprised. I had to be. He nodded once and went back to his screen. That was his version of approval. When my sister walked in and saw us sitting together, her expression shifted for half a second, before smoothing back into a smile. "Bonding without me?" she joked lightly. My brother closed his laptop. "We were studying." She laughed. "Of course you were." Her eyes stayed on me. From that day on, the atmosphere changed. She did not confront me. She never raised her voice. Instead, she started creating situations where I would look wrong, without her ever touching me. She volunteered me for things I was not ready for. She corrected me in front of others, always gently, always with concern. "You are doing it wrong," she would say softly. "Here, let me help you." People smiled at her kindness. I started noticing patterns. She always positioned herself between me and my parents. She answered questions directed at me. She reminded them of shared memories they had with her. Memories I could never compete with. I wrote everything down. Dates, times, exact phrasing. Not because I planned to use it, because I needed proof I was not imagining it. My therapist had warned me about this. Gaslighting rarely looks like cruelty. It looks like care. It sounds reasonable. It makes you question yourself before you ever question the other person. The first time my mother frowned at me instead of her, my chest tightened. "She was only trying to help," my mother said gently after my sister left the room. "You do not have to be so defensive," I apologized. Later that night, my sister knocked on my bedroom door. She did not wait for an answer. "I hope you are not upset," she said, closing the door behind her. "I really am trying to make this easier for you." Her voice was calm, almost kind. I met her eyes. "I know." She studied my face, searching for something. Fear, anger, gratitude. She found none. That unsettled her. The messages started appearing more frequently. Not to me. About me. I did not snoop. I did not hack. I simply noticed what she left behind when she was careless. A phone screen lighting up. A notification flashing my name. She complained about me to her friends. About how exhausting I was. How fragile. How unpredictable. How my presence was disrupting everything. One message stood out. "She does not belong here." This was my life first. I copied nothing. I took no pictures. I did not need to. Her behavior escalated when my brother started paying more attention to me. He asked for my help with a project. He invited me to sit with him during family movie night. He defended me once, quietly, when my sister corrected me too sharply. "Let her speak," he said. She smiled through it, but her hands clenched. The night everything shifted, I overheard her on the phone. I was heading downstairs for water when I heard my name. She was in the study, door half closed, her voice low and sharp. "She is not as innocent as she looks," she said. "They feel sorry for her. That is the problem." I paused. "I cannot lose this," she continued. "I gave up everything for this family." Her tone was not desperate. It was furious. I went back upstairs without making a sound. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every smile, every moment. She had positioned herself as the victim and me as the threat. I realized then that this was not about blood. It was about control. She could not share attention. She could not share love. She could not tolerate a reality where she was not the center. And she was willing to do whatever it took to protect that position. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Be careful," it read. "She is saying things about you." I stared at the screen for a long time. My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. I felt something colder settle in my chest. Clarity. I replied with a single word. "Thank you." From that moment on, I stopped hoping things would resolve themselves. I stopped believing patience alone would save me. Because patience without preparation is not strength. It is vulnerability. And she had begun to see me not as a guest, not as a mistake, but as a threat that needed to be removed. I did not know how far she was willing to go, but I was about to find out. The day I disappeared started like any other. That was the most frightening part. School ended early. The sky was clear, the kind of blue that makes everything feel deceptively safe. My sister did not wait for me at the gate that afternoon. She texted me instead. "I am not feeling well. Go home without me." I did not question it. I walked alone through the side street behind the campus, headphones off, backpack heavy against my shoulders. I remember thinking that the silence felt wrong, too clean, too empty. Then a hand covered my mouth. The force came from behind, strong, practiced. My body reacted before my mind did. I kicked. I twisted. My nails dug into skin. The grip tightened, cutting off sound, cutting off air. A familiar scent filled my nose. Her perfume. The world tilted. The sidewalk disappeared beneath me. I was dragged backward, shoved into the back of a vehicle. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke up with my head pounding. The air was damp and cold. Concrete pressed against my back. My wrists were bound, not painfully, but firmly enough to remind me that struggling would be pointless. My mouth was free. That was intentional. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching me like I was an object she had finally managed to move out of the way. "You took too much," she said calmly. Her voice was steady, controlled. I tested my voice. "You could have asked me to leave." She laughed softly. "You do not understand, Bella. You do not get to choose." I looked around. A storage room, industrial shelves, no windows, a single bulb flickering overhead. "This was my life," she continued. "My family, my future. And you walked in and ruined it." I said nothing. She crouched in front of me, her eyes sharp. "You think they see you now? They still see me. They always will." I searched her face and saw it clearly then. She was not afraid of losing love. She was afraid of losing power. "I am not here to hurt you," she said. "Not if you cooperate." My heart beat slowly, evenly. I thought about foster homes, locked doors, adults who smiled while deciding my fate. I had survived worse. Hours passed, or minutes. Time lost meaning. At some point, she left the room. I listened, counted breaths, measured silence. Loose, not enough to escape. Enough to move when the time came. When she returned, she was angrier. "They are asking questions," she said. "Your brother is suspicious. You should have stayed quiet." I met her gaze. "You should have left me alone." Her face hardened. "This ends tonight," she said. She turned away. That was when I screamed, not out loud, inside. My brother had once joked that I was paranoid about my phone. I never corrected him. He did not know that tracking settings were my version of insurance. I had turned them on the moment I arrived in that house. Some habits never leave you. I focused. I pictured my phone. I pictured the signal. When the door slammed open again, it was not her. It was my brother. Behind him, my parents. Police. Light flooding the room. She screamed. My mother collapsed. My father shouted words I had never heard him use. They untied me carefully. My legs shook when I stood. I did not cry. I did not scream. I leaned into my mother and let her hold me. Later, as the police led her away, she looked back at me. Her eyes were empty. "You still lost," she said. I did not respond, because this was not the end. It was the moment everything she built began to collapse. They said it was handled quietly. That was the word my father used. Quietly. As if silence could soften what had happened. As if careful phrasing could protect the family name the business, the illusion of control. The police did their jobs. Lawyers followed. Statements were taken. Evidence was logged. Because she was under 21, because I survived, because the system always prefers clean endings. The charges were negotiated. Attempted unlawful detention, conspiracy, psychological coercion. Words that felt thin compared to the reality of concrete floors and locked doors. My parents asked me what I wanted. That question sat between us like a fragile object no one wanted to touch. I thought about it for a long time. I did not ask for revenge. I asked for distance. The court issued a restraining order. My father signed papers formally severing all legal and financial ties. Trust access revoked. Educational sponsorship terminated. The word disowned never appeared in official documents, but everyone understood what it meant. She left the house the same way I had once arrived, with nothing. The night after everything was finalized, my mother came to my room. She sat on the edge of my bed, her posture careful, like she was afraid of crossing another line. Her eyes were swollen, exhausted, older than they had been 6 months earlier. I failed both of you, she said quietly. I did not rush to comfort her. I loved her, she continued. I still do. But I cannot excuse what she did to you. I nodded. Love and accountability do not cancel each other out. That was something I learned long before I met her. My brother took it hardest. He did not speak to anyone for days. When he finally did, it was to me. She chose to hurt you, he said. That is not something I can forget. He did not say her name. I did not ask him to. Life did not snap back into place. It adjusted. Therapy continued. School resumed. The house grew quieter. Some nights, I still woke up expecting someone to tell me to leave. Some habits do not disappear just because circumstances change. One afternoon, months later, we ran into her by accident. She looked smaller, thinner, stripped of polish. The confidence that once wrapped around her like armor was gone. When she saw us, her face changed. Fear flickered, then something bitter. She did not speak to my parents. She looked at me. For a moment, I saw what she might have been if things had been different. If someone had taught her that love was not a limited resource. If she had not been taught that survival meant domination. Then the moment passed. We walked on. That night, my mother asked me if I felt relieved. I considered the question. I feel finished, I said. That was the truth. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel triumphant. I felt clear. Blood brought me back to this family. Truth decided who stayed. I no longer tried to earn space. I no longer apologized for existing. I stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. The house still felt unfamiliar sometimes, but it no longer felt hostile. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. People often ask me if I would forgive her. They want a neat answer, a moral lesson they can digest easily. I tell them this instead. Forgiveness is not a performance. It is not something you owe someone who chose to hurt you. It is something you decide when it no longer costs you peace. I am not there yet, and I am not ashamed of that.